Robert was, I think, the best thing to describe Robert. I mean, a husband and a father. When we were dating and we talked about what we wanted to do and be someday, that was the first thing he always said, is he wanted to be a good husband and father. And he was. I mean, he really did strive to be that. He appreciated sarcasm, a good dirty joke. He was the best friend anyone could have. If he would hear a friend of his in the hospital, he would drive hours just to pop into the hospital just to surprise that friend. And people remembered that. And, when we did his celebration of life, there were so many people there that had so many great memories of him. Robert went to work very early in the mornings, about 4 a.m. So oftentimes he was out the door before I even woke up or I even knew that he was gone. I had just gotten out of the shower, getting ready to come up here to Patterson, and I sat down on my vanity, which is by our bed, and all of a sudden I heard this boo. And I looked over, scared me to death. Robert was laying in bed, and I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I just have this headache. I don't feel real good. I had to come home and try to sleep this off. I don't know what it is." He described it to me like a really bad hangover, just nausea, vomiting, a bad headache. He had told his boss that I just have this headache I can't shake. I'm going to try to go home and nurse this headache a bit. And we didn't think anything of it. What it sounded like is maybe he had a virus. I told him, "Let's watch you through the afternoon. If you're not feeling any better, we'll get you an appointment over at Patterson. We'll get you into your provider. We'll figure out what's going on." His last text to me was about 11 o'clock that day, and he just said, "I'm miserable." And I said, "I'm so sorry. I will get you an appointment." I said, "I've talked to the nurses. We think you might have a stomach virus." And he didn't answer me back. I called him. And it's very unusual for Robert. He always answers my texts, always answers my calls. So I went home a bit early to go check on him. And I went home and it looked like he was sleeping. In fact, he was snoring. The snoring was a little unusual. And what I would find out later, that what I was seeing was what's called reflective breathing, or agonal breathing, I believe is the right term, where he was already gone at that point, but his body was just trying to stay alive. And so it sounds like gasps or snores. And Robert had sleep apnea, so that was not unusual to me to hear that kind of snoring and cadence in his breathing when he didn't have a CPAP on. So I tiptoed around him for hours, because this kind of breathing can last minutes to hours. I went to the dollar store to get him chicken soup and Sprite. I thought he's going to wake up with that stomach bug, still thinking that he had this stomach bug. I put everything on the table. I was going to sleep in a different room, so I didn't disturb him, and I didn't catch the stomach bug, because still thinking that's what it was. I wanted to check on him one more time before I fell asleep, because then I knew I wanted to just let him know, "You've got chicken soup on the counter if you wake up." And he wasn't breathing anymore by that time. Called 911. And I'll say our dispatcher was wonderful. I've never had to call 911 before. Walked me through everything as I gave Robert CPR. And our EMS team and police officers were there really quickly and were so kind and just took over for me. And I knew in my heart he was gone by that time. When I felt him, the way his head turned when I tried to wake him up, I knew. But still, they tried, and they did it, and asked if I wanted to take him to Patterson. I said, "Yes, please take him to Patterson. I know people there, and I know they'll try to do whatever they can." And the people here worked so hard and were so kind. They held me up in some of my most vulnerable moments, held my hand as I called my kids and his mom after he passed away. He was pronounced dead at 9:33 Tuesday, May 20th. Robert's cause of death was an intracranial hemorrhage, which is a type of stroke or brain bleed. Very rare. They just happen sometimes, which is incredibly frustrating. But Robert did have some of the indicators that would increase his risk for having this kind of stroke. And so that's in part why I want to make sure that I'm telling that story, is that there's underlying things that men or women may have that they're pushing off on the back burner to go get those things checked because we didn't know what some of those things were, and it could increase his risk of having a stroke. Robert was a smoker. Robert, I've read his medical records. He reported to his doctors he smoked 1 pack a day for 20 years. I thought he was smoking 1 pack a week, not even thinking it was that much. But that's one of the risk factors, is smoking. Even if you're a previous smoker, it still can cause that stress on your cardiovascular system, cause those vascular weaknesses in your brain. Robert did have severe sleep apnea. He was managing it pretty well, but he put off his sleep study for many years before he was diagnosed. So my understanding of that intracranial hemorrhage is that kind of sleep apnea over a prolonged amount of time can cause that kind of stress and wear and tear on your vascular system. And like I said, he was compliant. He wore a CPAP every single night. But it took a long time to get him there and get that sleep study done so we can take care of that. Robert, at the time of his death, was obese. He was considered obese medically. He wore his weight very well. He's a very tall guy. You would never look at him and think, well, that would be a diagnosis of obesity. But it was. And he had tried to take off a few pounds, but it was something kind of put on the back burner, that it wasn't real important. With some of that. And what I believe with Robert wanting so badly to be a good employee and a good father, a good husband, I think there was underlying stress that maybe he carried around quietly that he didn't talk a lot about. And certainly we would have intervened and got him some help with that. But those are some of the few things the underlying things that he had, and that I didn't know and wouldn't think to pay attention to for him. He's very missed. He could have been around a lot longer if we would have done some of these things, I think, for him. Make an appointment with your primary care provider. If you don't have one, establish yourself with one. That's what they're here for. Don't just wait until you're sick and call a doctor. Call them up. That's what we're here for. We take care of you when you're sick, or take care of you when you're well, and make sure we're managing any chronic conditions that can leave you in an unhealthier state later on. Maybe you are young, you have diabetes, and you think, oh, I don't need to manage it and control it. I'm young, I'm okay. Don't wait to do those things, because now is when you need to do it. Robert had 3 of his 4 grandparents live into their 90s. I think both of us saw in our mind that he won the genetic lottery, that nothing was going to happen to him. He had genetics on his side. His grandparents lived to an old age, and for the most part were very independent and mobile at the end of life. And so I think that in his mind, in my mind, we didn't have to worry about some of these other things. So if you're a wife, or you have a husband that maybe is putting off that sleep study or some of those things, whether it's diabetes or doing your colonoscopy, those type things, don't wait, because you don't have the time you think you do. We really thought that we had more time to do this. For Robert, I would tell him at 40, I said, you need to quit smoking by the time you're 40. And then he wouldn't do it, or he would have trouble doing it. It's okay by 45. And the last time we talked about it, I said, okay, hon, by 50, you need to quit smoking, because I want you around for a really long time. I'm going to be really upset if I find out you get lung cancer or something else due to the fact you're a tobacco user. And I don't want to be pointing fingers at that. I just know that was one for us in our marriage that he tried to do. And it was very hard, and we didn't think to get him any more support than that maybe it wasn't that important, because of his genetics, and because that, he had grandparents that lived so long. Both of his parents are still here, late in their 70s. So just have men, don't wait, just get it done. Just make that phone call, come in. Even if you don't think you have any problems at all, at least establish a relationship with a provider, so when the time comes and you need that care, to come in and get it.